Hi, for 420 for this video, since it's about marijuana and schizophrenia. In Canada, we legalized marijuana. Um, so it's about if I always been questioned, having spent a lot of time surrounded by dealers and drugs and whatever, and having spent some time doing psychosis. I did maybe four toxic psychosis, and one of them they actually declared me a schizophrenic paranoia. Uh, that mysteriously just stayed long enough to get me away from my daughter. I think more than anything else, because I wasn't really hearing voices. Well, they got me on a medication ordinance or a law bill kind of. The law was telling me that I had to take the medication. It was what was the name of that medication? I can't remember. It was intramuscular. All the time I had that, never experienced any voices or. I've always been paranoid. That's just by becoming. The paranoia actually comes from the fact that they play around with words and put accents on some and kind of teach you new meanings, and after a while all those new meanings interconnect and form this kind of image or meaning or resume kind of that is kind of scary or often implicates dangers or scary stuff, and it often tries to find your fear and use it against you. Um, so the paranoia, uh, yeah, well, I guess it's a true illness if you want. The weaker will need medication or some sort of. According to me, it's just the people you you have to be with. According to me, all mental illnesses or almost are the ones that are not due to physical malformations or something. All the other mental illnesses would actually come from narcissistic pervert, mind control, and manipulation with telepathy. That would explain the voices that schizophrenics and people that do psychosis might tend to express and say that they are being harassed or hearing hallucinating voices. They can be considered like an hallucination. It's just that they all serve the same purpose and they have a function that interrelates the comments, and they're actually working for something. They're actually keeping some sort of thought structure in place, and this kind of that the eight infinity symbol. Oh, you can't see how that would be. Well, it's like the number 8, but on its side. That's one of the narcissists' coalition. because they collaborate secretly, and what they have, like a model was, most of the time when you deal with a narcissistic couple, you'd either get the round woman dominating a good man, or the Harley Quinn Joker couple, where they're not totally 100% straight with each other and manipulate a lot using the mind and communicate that way also. Because the schizophrenia and the psychosis, to me, when I step back and I look at what was happening, is that I was just more aware of things that I didn't normally notice, or that my unconscious mind or my subconscious mind would normally manage, and that I would not pay attention to because it would be done automatically. But what I would experience would be new, how do you say hazard? New, when it's something happens, you don't know why, and it kind of relates to something. It's not a. It's the French that's keeping me back. An anecdote or whatever. So what was I supposed to say? The pot doesn't, I think, affect your short time memory, because I'll have trouble following a plot when I do videos, and I'll kind of sway into this direction all the time. That kind of all comes toward that conclusion. Most of my videos, if you talk about psychic connections and occultism, magic. I have a psychiatrist right now that I spoke of magic to, and that she said, yeah, that's possible. So the psychiatrist is saying, and she's keeping me on 4 milligrams of Aldol, that I don't think I need at all, actually, because I want to keep my mind awake, and I love these real eyes I have. I can see and sense stuff that normal people can't see. It's kind of a gift. It's a oneness, or this goodness that gave me a position of influence or something in communities, and when I'm surrounded with people, where I tend to be a Christmas tree, or the post of love where you can lean on to and grow teeth. The comfort zone that people lean on to, because when they're doing robots, that zone got spread out, and they have freedom, and they don't know what to do when they're free because nobody's telling them what to do. So they automatically stick somewhere. When you're a drug user, you often have to deal with dealers, and then you have to deal with addicts. You have to deal with just people that casually use all sorts of archetypes, and some of those, with their habits, create a bad archetype of people. And there are rats and dogs, horses, and whatever. There are evil people, or people with addiction especially, will become manipulative and evil in order to sustain that addiction, because financially, especially. And then the dealer will become manipulative, trying to establish a system that makes you come back, and that by using the stepping stone, starting with marijuana, that they'll make links and associations in your brain, either by showing or talking to you, then you on a word that opens you up, and while you're open, they just have to drop some sort of sequence in these words, and they'll become a mechanism because you were open. Your subconscious has been manipulated by the exterior. Um, and it can also be, they all have this narcissism. It's what feeds these people's their ego and their power trip, or they want they can influence your needs. They can burst your bubble. They can get into your bubble, and they actually have these tubes. When you're a Christmas tree like me, or that pole, you become a manner, a man noir, a black man. Manor is a house, free house for tons of people, or a apartment building kind of thing, because we psychically cohabit with each other and within each another, and there's always somebody that will become the father of the group, and it goes up until there's one father, I think, or I know with the different factions and stuff like that, there might be multiple. No, there are multiple equally influence fathers in the world that can change people's habits just by commanding. So if they manage to get into your bubble without, sometimes they'll do it without you noticing, by just attracting your eyesight really subtly, and they're kind of pulling on your energy kind of all the time. So you feel, and they'll react in every little movement you can do until you get really stable, and that you practically don't move no more. They'll eat up your attention, and then slowly direct you into the direction they want, and they'll start making you think that you're the only one feeling the love, and they're going to try to get that love associated with bad things, or with a sequence like the pot. If you daydream and doze off too long, well, you just might end up at money, lighter, white powder, depending on the dealer. If the music just grabs you, you have to let your body move to the music. Just go mellow and pay attention to what direction you want to go, and why you want to go that way, what is that way, and try to listen. Maybe if something is telling you to go that way or that way, because they manage by pulling your attention. I've been a test subject for narcissists. I've been a tattoo artist, and they would all transform into these little fascist soldiers. They'd all become pricks and give me trouble, burst my bubble. I'd be how do you say? In French, we say they all, golden dice or something. They all is when you're a bit retarded because you're kept open and something's bugging you that you can't really see. It's just bugging you just enough to pull that juice. That's it. And without you feeling nothing, they just want to keep you on the borderline. And by touching the love and the sexual chakra, we establish an electrical connection, a psychic connection with the person. And what they manage to do is convince us that the love is what is ours, what we feel, and that they can manipulate us with that, which they can. But when you're like me and they put everything that was worst on the world in your bag, in your mind, the worst words you can ever imagine will, if you're open and sort of meditative and aware and realize what's happening, and if you're sensing your inner self, what's happening inside, you just might hear voices sometimes because they manage. I skipped. I can't remember what I was saying. Um, so they manage to work their way up because you become some sort of a tunnel, or they put a cone and they just dig up the pasta because energy feels like pasta and like a modeling clay kind of thing that you can stretch like caramel, and that becomes tape and Roman robes kind of thing all twisted around you. That's because I'm a father or a Christmas tree because everybody's in here. So free home, welcome to this world. Kisses. um, so yeah, they managed to make it to a place in your mind where their thoughts can be heard. Because what you're hearing when you're hallucinating voices are actually instructions that are making you behave a certain way. Either they're getting you to speak white because they're all white, and they're really careful about how they speak, and they speak a certain way. It's a blue tongue we call. It's the red or blue, good and evil. It's kind of dependent, non-dependent, alpha, beta. The blue is more alpha because they access that alpha brain wave state where magic is possible and where they can manipulate your muscles, your breathing. They can contract muscles. They can simulate cardiac arrests. Uh, they can drag you down to the well in the stomach or below, way down next to the floor, and just keep you down there by contracting muscles at the right moment and affecting the certain area of your antenna or your aura captors. They can by they, they can make their thoughts appear in your mind and command you. So they're gonna try and get you. The nice ones just want you to speak correctly so they don't get shit because they're open all the time. No matter what you say, if you're a Jagermeister, deer resistant yellow submarine. It's imagery. It's not schizophrenia. It's because they speak in this bird language that uses all these other words to mean something else. That's the root of paranoia. Because you start imagining stuff and things that they didn't actually mean in their sentence, but you kind of capped it subliminally and adopted, but it wasn't in the intention. It's you that created that. So you tend to use your own fear against yourself, and you build something that you're most afraid of and that you have to confront every day, and you're always scared every time you meet someone. Or and often if you're kissed, because they do kisses, and what they give is what we call roses, like the Godfather has a red rose. um, Organized crime and dealers have these roses that are bypasses, that they kind of make trails, and we're kind of surfing this kind of area in our mind or within ourselves, and those are kind of psychic trails where we can, where they can go through. They'll feel this kind of tunnel and this nylon like burglars, like if you have a net but there's a long stretch tube that never ends, and you can just always crawl up, and then you end up on this bell that spits tape that twirls around like paper would do, crazy paper. It spits some of that. I call it love because it's, when you say become, it starts doing that on the wire, and when you say believe, it leaves the wire and leaves just the root of the tape. or the voile, the drapery, because it can stretch also and can compact into this wire, this dough stuff, and you start feeling it, and we that's how you write here. That's how you change and verbalize things into existence. That's how you change your reality when you have the power to do so. But we can all affect our own reality and affect our own subconscious mind and body and command ourselves to act a certain way just by speaking to ourselves or just thinking of it in the right zone of your brain. So what they do is they're gonna crawl up in the they're like love horny feelings. It's like that little love that people that are not used to feeling it will express some horniness and might want to get laid really bad. But there's an actual one like that that's really really hard to resist, that they'll use with pedophiles, that are most of them, they're good, really good guys that had success and money, and then they surrounded them with narcissists that can that in the tunnels they added instructions and they switched your interests from place. Just by switching the change, you can hook people up in a certain order that will give a certain dynamic in the group, depending on what order and what kind of person is next or connected, just by with the love, what's next to you, what's on each side. I've had two shovels or a pair of knees. I'd lean on, as soon as I touched the love, my knees would appear. In French, genou is I tie. They'll tie you up. The somebody that you lean on and you see your knees is a narcissist that's going to try to dominate you with fear or pain, and by making you think you're the only one affected by what's happening. But when you're feeling this, you can affect him too, and you have, and if you can from within in the underdog mode, because we will position each in a relationship or an interaction with someone, we will either become master or servant kind of thing, or not. In a dominant optic, they want a servant, and they'll put an accent on diminishing terms and condescending stuff, which is the blue language. It is a bit of a negative tantric mantras, because all the power of words you can print onto the tape, and what you put on the love, well, it will love whatever you say on love, and then you can put hate through it to keep certain graphemes or parts of words away from the tape, and actually all reality and truth kind of places itself with that love. But we could have been conditioned or on the influence of a master that's making us behave a certain way, that we don't actually feel the master, but he is somewhere where his decisions come before ours or override ours with a psychic connection. And while they're up there, or in the tubings, what I call YouTubes, because they used to be you. They took something that would never speak evil about and appropriated the mantra you and he, and lots of whatever we use the most. They make an evil story out of and relate it to hell and the Calvary, the Christ's damnation kind of thing. And that's all a bunch of roses. It's yellow stickers that they put in the tunnel that trigger voices that say that every time you look at the chair, it'll say the same thing all the time. That's yellow paper a narcissist left in your mind. it's hard to believe. And they'll be the first to say that I'm crazy about saying all this because it's their hiding spot. It hides the New World Order and fascism. Fascism's tool is dementia. Schizophrenia and psychosis is what's keeping them hidden. And then their weapons is Alzheimer, cancer, and all the illnesses. You can verbally induce illness in someone just by speaking the right mantras, or you can verbally cure someone or purge someone from evil narcissistic possession, like narcissistic perverts do. Sorry. So does does marijuana cause psychosis? I would say no, because it's saying cough more. So I obey. Arrête de tousser. Marijuana relaxes you. It gets you mellow and takes your worries away. The only thing is that it relaxes you, and you don't get hyperactive like when you're on a psychosis. You don't get voices, and it doesn't bring you to that zone in your head. What brings those verbal hallucinations? I'm sorry, I look terrible right now with this coffee. That was the last stoke for the video. It doesn't really affect me. When you smoke a lot, you barely feel a bit tired or relaxed. It'll open energies and chakras, and it'll balance you with something that's harmonious and comfortable kind of thing, and with a bit of slow dazed offness where you're in a comfort zone that you feel a different way or different things, or you're connected to a different mode of perception. And I would say that it's too relaxing and to induce psychosis, and that what would cause the psychosis is the fact to come in contact with a dealer, because everything you buy from an illegal dealer will have strings attached or chains to it that lead to a sequence that puts itself in evidence with vibration and noise, or when somebody talks, it'll appear, or you'll turn that way and notice it. I kind of see them blink now, but before I would just kind of look that way, thinking I was the one wanting to look that way, or thinking I was just daydreaming and not paying attention to where I'd end up looking and what was the sequence and order, and what would each object, in which direction would I go after staring at, let's say, my phone, well, for a long time, because I had trouble with the speed. That, because it's chemical, I would, and it gets you hyperactive or something, or stimulates, plays with hormones a lot, or neurotransmitters, and they put cut and shit and whatever because it's illegal. I'd say that would have a lot more tendency to give possibilities to give a psychosis that, to me, sounds more like an irritation of neural transmitters or neurotransmitters. And if there's voices, those are not hallucinations. Those are narcissists that printed something in the tape tunnel or on an object that triggers that comment. Or they will have been in your mind and mentally commanded you to behave a certain way in order to not to give them bullshit and to speak white and nice and or they'll just say nice. Well, we just say nice and we become nice because we can command that way the Christmas trees and but that is from the you get something, they kiss you something when you get in contact, and the bag it's in, and the substance, either it's pot or speed or whatever, cocaine, whatever is in the bag is kind of cursed. There's this mini subtle change that's gonna happen to your perception and what you notice. All of a sudden, because they'll raise you from this much and plop plop, drop two little balls in the back of your spine, and those balls will become part of the normal program, but they're actually bypassing you towards dependencies or other drugs. So if you're daydreaming and the music starts hammering, the snare or something goes click click, and then what clack clack clack, the click that flashed every time it clicked. And then that, and that, and then that. And why am I staring at white powder now? You know, and it's either because my heart wants that white powder and needs something, and it's telling me what I need. It's making me look at it. It's not an hallucination, but it's kind of or they could have psychically and narcissistically programmed that tunnel in which and most of the time they'll use happy tunnels. They'll use your happiness and your sources of love and try to cut you off from the Christmas tree or the post. They're pole dancers. They're gonna strip you off the pole. The pole is where you lean on, and everybody's leaning on the pole from the basement to the attic inside of me. And then there's these draperies that they kind of curl back down into the back and hide in the back. And I think it's when I sleep, they put all their stuff back. I don't know, because I get the energy's hard when I wake up or something like that. The energy I feel inside me, and that from rubbing it with music, it gives beer. It gives the prana, I don't know if taking all this energy, that's how infinite waters, take it. I'm always full of this cold stuff that we breathe in. I have tons. I'm always breathing that. I need to share it. They actually cut my reserve when I go to the bar. I'm on this program that people are going to want to rob me from my air. And and the little fascist soldiers are in that dynamic, and that's what happens every time. And it's this mechanism that falls into place. It's kind of a booby trap system. And it's all with triggers and effects. And then when you start cleaning and grinding down the energy or the crunchers, the hardened energy that kind of locked into place and that it's kind of these claws clawing into your brain, and the two where the serotonin and the dopamine are, they're clogged, and this voice is keeping you away from that. So when you're daydreaming, whenever you try to go unblock that, because you will naturally tend to want to open everything up normally and to remove all curses and bad comments and stuff like that. I had trouble with my business. I hear clients' comments. So I wasn't clean. And all the narcissists and the fascists, well, somebody like me, a good night, they'll try to sabotage as much as they can and drive us and drive to dementia or schizophrenia, because we have the truth. We understood the game. We spoke the language, and we are a menace because we will not take their shit, you know. And the motocross sucks, and we don't want no cross in our face. And I wouldn't put something that killed my savior up over my head and on my neck, because it's what killed them. I'm not supposed to love that. It's a bad symbol. It's intimidation. And even the church caused psychosis and depression, and then they have this snot, and they play a lot with your nose, and you know that their church is really good, and oh, that church. Like my friend Russell tried to show in his last stand-up show. So those voices come from people. They're not hallucinations, and they fill out a function. And by tattooing, I'd always get them in my house, and I'd always have to stay open. So from staying open, and they'd be discussing, they'd be putting all the worst shit in my bag, the words that make me move or react, or that belong to me, that puts me in evidence, or makes me glow or flash or attract attention when it's said. Well, I have all the words. Then I got all the good words coming from music. But they're clairvoyant. They have real eyes. They can see where the energy is focused when you're open. And I'm always open. That's a Christmas tree. You're always open. So you have to figure out a place to hide that doesn't show them anything. You have to remain an alpha and give them the alpha if they're looking at what you're searching for. Because when they touch the love, they see where your energy is focused. If you're thinking of having a sip, if you're a smoker, you'll probably end up in the ashtray or a pack of smokes, because that's what your heart wants. The nicotine is tearing you out. And then they'll drag you to ground zero, where that first breath you take is what your heart needs. The first 7 centimeter that your ribcage rises, that first intake is what your brain is going to take, like a picture in like your next need. So if you were stuck on a girl, or by looking at her, you put your love on there in order to remember where she was. So if they take that love, they can start playing around with you, and oh, holy shit, man! What the fuck's happening there? I think I might be moving my head. So they affect you, and that's how you wiggle somebody open when they're a rat. You get inside of them, underdog, and you poke up with a cone head, and you just twist his neck out. And then you can start rinsing with music. You put vibration and frequencies on the dough, on the energy you feel, and it becomes beer or energy, prana. And then when you're melting their notes and their bypasses they did in your trail, and the new routes they traced that keep you addicted, or hearing stuff you don't want, because they can parasite your whole house with comments when you're open, and you'll be hearing, and it can be commit suicide. They can say whatever they want, because nobody's gonna ever be able to prove what's been said on that plateau in the intercom zone. And whenever you fall in this worldwide mind space, there was always the ace of spades you'd be playing in your mind with. That's something that kills. It's a spade. It's the ace. And don't forget the joker. So that would be the kind of magic mind game that my schizophrenia gave me. But it was an actual conflict, an actual war. And it was two magicians fighting one another with fear. And with dependence and dominance. I killed the Kraken. I used to do crack. I managed to get on top of it, being dragged below to start with and dependent. So that dependency gets you to stick on people, and if they get you to stick on the right part of your brain, well, you'll always be sticking where they can think to you. They just think and you hear what they thought. So they can order you around. And whenever I'm trying to dig the pasta with music and to get the claws crunched out and smooth and to get all this love feeling, the kind of horny, and there's this big nets that twirl like that and twirls all over. And this one thing goes in the nose and it's annoying. You're always poking it out. But you're supposed to poke it out when you say a bad word. But yeah, when you say a white word, because they're actually killing us doing that. And they'll use beer smokes and whatever's at the bar and on the underground market. That's how we kill each other now. So they're playing a fascist war, an underground collaborative fascist war, and they are telepaths. And by listening to those stories and what's said, is they're trying to keep me away from themselves because I feel something's horny up there. I try to start to dig it and to put music onto it, and then this voice will override and say, go further, go down. So you avoid that zone. Whenever you're daydreaming, well, you hit that, it doesn't go away, so you obey because you don't hear the command. When you hear the command, you have the possibility to do the opposite and not fall into that program. It's so insulting when you don't want to help something and you're helping him out without noticing because he commanded you to work for him. So everything you do unconsciously, placing people, because you can affect people from a distance and you can turn heads. And I had this kid in front of me in the bus and I had my muscles were contracting left and right without moving my head. But I noticed that when this one would contract, his head would turn this way and then the other way, and I'd be turning his head with my muscles as much as I wanted, and he'd just follow, thinking he felt like looking that way when it was I that was making him look, probably programming his sequence to look there, not there, call him, not him, blah, 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 to get a good trio or a trinity or a trilogy to function with just good, with a red, green, blue, or black, red, green. So no evil, no dependent. Then there's a red, purple, black. Anyways, and we have colors depending on our aura and the way we act and the program we're on and our way of speech. And it's a kind of a color code and a non-verbal code that they use a lot to communicate. And they'll actually show something we can't speak of. So those voices, it comes, marijuana won't give. I smoked for 20 years. And even since I'm she said I'm not schizophrenic anymore. Because she thinks I used it last time not to go to jail because they took my kid away. The KKK took my baby away. They still left and raised right capitalist rat porks at Beauport with a beautiful pork star. Pigs. Like in 1984, the pigs were so they do all that by manipulating people's thoughts. And when the pyramid on the $1 bill, when that was active, whoever was on top had the power to command, dictate, or influence the people below, and to decide what, and depending on the way, with the amount of hate and love that he would say this and that sound and those words, they would program. And if you look at just see gin, whiskey, rum. What else? I don't drink liquor, but I have all these tastes, and for every type of liquor, there's a taste. They wanted us getting drunk and killing ourselves. And then amphitheater, forum, there's all these words that have this presence, either love, sex, horniness, or energy beer, whiskey, or rye, or whatever, gin, tonic, martini, sambuca, scotch. They all have this taste I can feel here whenever I mention one of those. So they were dictating us needs and cutting the love away so we become dependent and consume. And that's what they'll do with their voices, is they're gonna bump us into this functioning mode where we consume for no reason and we stay clients, and that's what gives schizophrenia, not the weed. It's the package, the strings attached. What's attached from getting in contact with manipulative, mind-controlling narcissists that have the power to telepathically command you. And where they put their strap in, they can make it to the source. And once they're on your initiative, well, it's their initiative that overrides before you get to plug yours in. So it's to become master of your own destiny and to resist control. And when you fall into puppet mode, well, then drift and write, create, stretch that mold, and carve your place into this place. And you can leave mental notes and speak to people, give them instructions that they'll hear all around the world this way. It's ways of communication and teaching the sacred arts of magic and manipulation and occultism and the Kabbalah and the gnosis and the thoughts, emerald tablets and all that hierarchic magic that of the Christian church and its cage and all that. Those are all light that's been manipulated in vibration and frequency that materialize this some sort of structure in our minds and in society that would maintain consumerism and fascism. And now that the pyramid has tilted and there's one upside down and one below, good and evil. Evil is being dictated upon. I'd rather say inspired, and good is being inspired too. But from the common collective soul, from the collective mind, and we can connect and communicate with that. The problem with schizophrenia is that you'll fall in this vicious circle of toxic people and narcissistic manipulative creeps, and they are toxic and they want to kill. They have a cannibalistic, predatorial attitude, and they always exclude a scapegoat. And when you're the scapegoat, well, you're often Christ, boss, chief. When you're scapegoating, you're boss. And it's when they scapegoat you that one of them crawls, or 2, 3 of them, and you end up trapped in this zone where voices bump you back all the time and where they harass you. And then they just look around them and they say that they'll know when it's you. They gave you an object in front of them. So they just have to be meditative and soft-eyed and out of focus, focusing on something else inside. And then if we're resisting or something, well, an object that represents us will attract their attention or flash. That's when they know it's you and that you're there. So they can start, and then they get you they ask you a question and that you can't keep yourself from answering. So as soon as they hear you, they say, now, that first time I got a psychosis with voices, it was when I made it to the psychiatric wing where they kept me for, I think it was 3 months. And it was when I sat with the patients that voices started harassing me and telling me to commit suicide and were being evil and that. And what it had started with is for this woman sitting next to me, and I noticed my breath being important all of a sudden. She was calculating my breath to synchronize, or actually giving commands to breathe now, breathe later, I'll go up, go down. That they kind of synchronize you, and then when you're synchronized, uh, then she can kind of occupy you from a master's position and speak to you. And what she put like little notes, and she'd keep on saying. Whenever I touch her, the comment would and she kind of makes you fall in love with her, with the love and the sex. So you kind of stick, as when you're in love, well, you're under the pen or the gun, because you're the one that's getting influenced the most by the love, and it's often and it's often narcissists and all that. That's why they always want to get on top. They do not want to get changed or washed or helped or whatever. They want to stay in control and in command of everyone they cross and be the winner all the time, and be have a good Facebook and look really good. But that is all a narcissistic collaboration. They'll put the V going. This is a narcissistic symbol. The V, the triangle. This is a narcissistic symbol. This is a narcissistic fascist symbol. Roses are hearts. King and queen, diamonds. Whatever went viral, the infinity symbol, because whenever they kiss you a rose, it starts over and over and over and over. And even if you dig it out, if you don't get the whole thing, it'll grow back, and it starts all over, and you just gonna start cleaning and restarting and restarting and restarting. It ends up going away after the hours of dancing, or you end up falling on the spot that this voice was or this pain was keeping you away from. So whenever because music grabs me and it erases those voices, and I have to crunch them with spikes. I go crunch, 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 and they give this beer, and there's these kind of places where it folds, where in the fold there's stuff to stretch and to put straight. There's this wire that goes, and that makes them turn like that, and to call that person. And that's how they keep their structure of domination that links to an alpha master that controls them all. And that when he finds the north, they all fall into place. That the natural leader would do that, but that's the position they want. But they manipulate to get that. But now I'm getting away from the schizophrenic with marijuana, but don't worry, I'd say no freaking way that marijuana gives psychosis, especially not if you buy it at a legal government established, like in Canada at the SQDC, where the government uses. There's no, the strings they attach is medical strings. So whenever you want to have a smoke, well, you'll be pulled towards your weed instead, or kind of thing. Or when you feel some sort of illness, you'll see the weed appear, and it'll kind of drag you to. That's what I want you to look at. Look at it. Looking higher. So yeah, mind control. It's the voices is this system that keeps people addicted, and that does the stepping stone that gets people to go further and interested in getting further by rubbing love to comments or needs, taking the needs and putting a name on that need, or a dot in the nostril that connects to this energy that's kind of tempting. So they'll change and they'll get you used and wanting it after a while, and then you'll naturally end up going back and following in their pattern. So it's a psychic trap from getting in contact with rats, evil narcissists, manipulative narcissists, and dealers. Because the black market uses a lot that bird language because it's a way you can communicate without proving. You can say evil stuff without being blamed because it's the bird whistle in the context. That makes us paranoid because we can find extra contexts that don't actually mean anything, but that we invented or decided to be afraid of. So schizophrenia is a victim of narcissistic harassment on the intercom, but it's not an hallucination. And she says, I'm not schizo anymore. But I don't tell her that I hear these voices because they're not always there. One of my roommates there, I got this little annoying instructor that I hear every once in a while, but he stopped being evil. He used to keep me down in speed and consuming and smoking and killing myself and blah blah. So, but now he's giving me food and juice and good stuff. So I kind of go with the. I don't. Whenever I try to change something from my routine, I'll start hearing the voices. They'll kind of try to bump me back into my routine or whatever. But you can erase them. I managed to take a whole bunch of those voices away by dancing and paying attention to what's happening inside of me and letting my body move to the music. Let the music grab you, transport you. You'll know exactly where to glide, and you'll glide on the wire and the dough that's inside of you. I'm listening to music right now, so I'm stretching those tentacles. That's been how we do it, and you try to dig into those spots. When you hear something, you go back on the tape where you heard it, and you crunch it out, and then it gives beer, and then it twirls inside of this pass and hides way at the end where you. It's schizophrenia playing around. It's this wire that's stuck in your brain and that's hiding behind this pain or this wanting to crack your head. So, yeah, it's been an hour. So, my opinion, I lived schizophrenia and psychosis. There's just an awakening of senses that is misleaded by psychiatry. They should be guided into that process and how to control their powers and their ability to feel stuff normal people don't feel, and to hear stuff and to access a zone where normal people don't access. And you can actually command on that zone using the same voice as yourself or somebody else that will visit that tunnel. So use the voice. That's why they have the voice on TV, because all those narcissists hear it, but they keep it secret because it's a law of secrecy. And they post tons of food pictures on every turn that could lead to their methods. So you can never find any information. It's always this overload of bunch of thousands of same pictures. Energy balls will give you cookies and tidbits. And those wrong cookie balls that you can eat. And you say energy. Yeah, cookies give energy. It's sugar in it, but I meant energy. And I don't know what you're supposed to write to get pictures of what I feel inside of me, but it's all been hidden. And the voice is that's why they have the voice, because they hear the voice and they communicate that way, and they command us that way. And if you don't hear the voice, you automatically obey, because that's all your subconscious knows how to do is that, and take pictures of what you need or want or love. So take care. Don't fear marijuana, and smoke a big spliff. Feel nice, feel highly, and don't forget that the stone that the builder refused will always be the head cornerstone. Ta-ta!